Hello everybody, today's car may not be big, but is it clever? That is the question. This is the VW Hi-Up, and my good friend Chris thinks that this is a misunderstood masterpiece. Is he right? Let's find out. Before we get started today, a couple of important notices. I am celebrating. We've hit 250,000 subscribers, and although YouTube won't give me anything for that, it still feels like a real landmark. So I want to say a huge thank you to everybody that's been a part of that journey, including CarVertical, the superpowered search tool that with just a reg number or VIN can give you all the information you want on any car you're thinking of buying. Not only is the CarVertical app easy to use, available now on both desktop and mobile, they've also been huge supporters of my channel for the last couple of years, and it's the support of businesses like them and viewers like yourself that have made this whole endeavour possible. If today's video inspires you to head off to the classifieds, make sure you use my link in the description down below to get yourself a discount on CarVertical. Likewise, don't forget we also have discount codes available for Dodo Juice's fabulous cleaning products. Enough ads, onto the video. Once upon a time, the idea of a car being in production for 10, 15, almost 20 years, reasonably unchanged, wasn't unthinkable. It was the norm. But today, it's practically unheard of. However, one car bucking that trend is this, the VW Up, which has now been on sale since 2011. This is not my first dalliance with an Up. I have previously driven the GTI, the range-topping model with 115 horsepower that seems to be on sale only periodically. Subsequently, I have also driven the Skoda Citigo, a badge-engineered version of the regular Up, and the E-Up, the electric one. Curiously, of them all, it was in fact the range-topping GTI that left me the coldest. Perhaps my expectations were simply so high they were never going to be met, but I felt like that car was a missed opportunity. VW was certainly charging enough to give you a little bit more than they did, and I could never help but shake the feeling it really wasn't a car that I wanted to thrash about. I found myself much preferring the Kia Picanto, which gave you similar performance to the Up GTI, but with a lot more tech and luxury for quite a bit less money. Today, a brand new entry-level Up will cost you £14,000, but a fully loaded Picanto just over 15. Why then is it that I'm behind the wheel of yet another Up, and what makes this different to any of those that I've driven previously? This is another car that also belongs to my friend Chris, who also has the Skoda Octavia that you may have recently seen. He has semi-inherited this vehicle. He is essentially its custodian while its owner is unable to drive it. Having now put a few miles on it, he is of the opinion that this could be the best of the range. Why is that? Well, on the one hand, all of the reasons that anyone would buy any Up. In other words, it's a small, I think actually quite good looking car with neat proportions, that's a fantastic city runabout, has a bit more space in it than you might expect, though a boot that is somewhat compromised. It does compensate by having a quite clever dual-level loading system. By default, it looks like the boot is pathetically small, because it is. However, you'll realise quickly that there is a hidden flaw, which neatly stows away, giving you, when needed, a little bit more space. For the older customer in particular, I think that's a genius solution because it stops them having to lean too far down into the car to get their shopping out and perhaps do themselves a mischief. There's also just about enough space in here for 4 adults, certainly for your reasonable 1 to 1.5 hour journey. And I love what they've done with the place. It's basic, it's simple, but it gives you all that you need. Your dashboard here consists of 3 simple gauges, rev counter, which is nice to see, a very big fuel gauge, one of the largest I think I've seen on any car, and a speedo. This is then supplemented by a basic digital display that plays the role essentially of trip computer. Over here though is the genius bit, because you've got fairly basic simple controls for all of your HVAC, you do have air conditioning, and your stereo is about as basic as it could be. But the real masterstroke of this setup is that rather than try and give you a big fancy colour display that will invariably date, they've simply given you a phone holder, which is genius. On the stereo, you then have a 3.5mm aux in, which means that if you can go and get an adapter for your phone, and why manufacturers started taking away headphone sockets from phones is just beyond me. But anyway, you can plug your phone in and then get everything that your phone has. Genius. What exactly the Hi-Up brought to the party, I really don't know. I think it involves some of this trim on the dash here, probably a few little other bits too, but really nothing important in the context of today. What it is that for Chris really makes this car is the engine. Like every Up, this is powered by a 3-cylinder 1 litre. However, here it has a turbocharger, just like in the GTI. I'm not sure whether it's the same turbocharger, but it has one nonetheless, and that means that this has 90 horsepower rather than the 75 of the next most powerful model. Okay, that may still be down on the 115 of the GTI, but you can remap it. And what is perhaps most interesting is the fact that it was one of these, a regular 90 horsepower Up, not the GTI, that was the basis for the famous Apex Sub 7 Up. The exact logic behind choosing one of those, I do not know. I suspect it may involve the fact that they were going to throw the suspension in the bin anyway, so getting the GTI one would have been meaningless, and the fact that the 6-speed gearbox in the GTI is allegedly something of a weakness. This 5-speed may not sound quite as exotic, but it is, I'm told, a lot more durable. Funnily enough, I think it was this time of year, in the middle of winter, when I drove a GTI, and my feeling here is very similar, but there is one key difference. By taking away that GTI badge, you totally change your perspective. You see, when you put something like that on a car, it tells people what they should be getting. And GTI to me should mean fun, playful handling, not sheer terror in every bend. There is absolutely every chance that I was being needlessly harsh on the GTI. Just about everybody else really seemed to like it, but for me, it never made all that much sense. I much preferred the steering and the feel of the Kia Picanto, and sure, it was a little bit down on firepower, but when you're talking about cars with this amount of it, it's really not that much of a concern. This was never ever going to be a car to take to Santa Pod, though if you have taken an Up drag racing, I salute you. Now, I do appear to have found myself in a little bit of traffic, so I'm going to turn around, put my foot down, and see how this car fares when you do try and have a little bit of fun. First off though, what's the turning circle like? This is a city car after all. This kind of stuff is important. Ooh, yeah, not so bad. Not stellar, but not bad. All right then. Are you ready? Fire! Another difference Chris told me between this and the GTI is that that has fake piped-in engine noise. Not really a surprise, just about everything does now. But this one allegedly does not. And I'm quite surprised. If that is the case, and I've no reason to disbelieve him, this is actually quite throaty and quite a nice thing to listen to. It has that distinctive 3-cylinder warble that doesn't sound quite like anything else. Though not exactly talky, certainly not after a remapped diesel Octavia, it's certainly quick enough. I must say though, what I felt when driving the GTI does still seem to be the case here. It simply isn't a chassis that gives me all that much confidence. The steering is pretty much inert, and you do get a sense every now and again the car does not have anywhere near as much grip as you think. There's been more than a few moments where I felt like the rear's begun to think about overtaking the front. It hasn't broken free, it hasn't done anything scary or sketchy, but you do know it's been considering it. Likewise, the brakes, press them as hard as you like. It feels like the number plate kisses the floor, and then the car starts to scrabble. It really does struggle a lot sooner than you'd expect it to. This just isn't a car that really enjoys being pushed. People talked about the Up GTI like it was the second coming of the original Mark I Golf GTI, and that just isn't true. For me, if you want a fun, small, but really enjoyable to drive little VW, that's the Lupo GTI. Absolutely fantastic. One of my all-time biggest surprises. Fabulous car, that. The only issue with that is that you are likely to pay nearly as much for one of those as you are to get into one of these. And I think a lot of buyers will be put off by the fact it's an older car, therefore may have more issues, isn't going to be covered by quite as many warranties, and also all round does feel quite a bit lower rent. I would say the Up does a fairly good job of conveying that slightly higher sense of quality that we like to think all German cars have. Just about all of the controls are fairly light, the weighting you'd expect for something like this. The gearbox actually is quite direct, very nice to use, I do like it. Visibility all round is generally pretty good, the only exception being the base of the A-pillar over here, which is quite busy. There's a lot going on, but I think for anything other than parking, it's not an issue. So, from a petrolhead's perspective, I think it remains fairly difficult to recommend the Up. Genuinely, I would say to anyone that wants something small but fun, either get the old Lupo or buy yourself a Picanto. However, that does not mean this is a car without an audience, far from it. It's one of those weird vehicles that would make a brilliant first or last car. For both young and old, there's a lot to love about it. You actually sit relatively high up, there's just about enough space in it. If you like, you can have parking sensors fitted, like this one has. Why you need them, I don't know, but you can have them. And though it's not exactly capacious, there is plenty of room in here for you and 3 of your mates to go on a shopping trip. Just so long as you don't buy anything, which is fine because, as a terrible generalisation, young people don't have any money and old people don't want to spend any. Fuel economy is decent, 48.5 to the gallon, and mercifully, the up lineup is powered chiefly by petrol, the only other option being electric. And that's handy because it means even older models are still going to hold appeal to those who want something frugal but without being a diesel. And on that note, just about everything else for this is pretty cheap too. Insurance, servicing, all that good stuff, none of it is likely to break the bank. That's the benefit of buying a car that's designed to be cheap. Tragically, the Up wasn't actually available with this engine for all that long. Its relatives, the Skoda Citigo and the Seat Mii, never got a turbocharged variant, but even this only had it for about 18 months. And that's a shame because to me, it really is the sweet spot of the range. It's still economical, yet has just that little bit extra poke that makes it feel a touch safer, a touch more enjoyable. So there we have it. That is the VW Hi-Up. While it continues to be a car that for me misses the mark, certainly as a petrol head, for the majority of people this still offers a tempting combination of just enough space. I do love the packaging of this car, a little bit of quality and luxury here and there, some genius touches like the little infotainment setup here, and a badge that still holds a lot of cachet to your UK buyer. And on the subject of badges, I think this is the crux of the matter. All of the criticisms so far are perfectly acceptable in a car which never pretended to be sporty. This is how a mid-spec city car should be. The fact is, it's the GTI which just never did anywhere near enough to justify use of that famous badge. It was simply a slightly faster, better looking version of the car I'm driving today, which will certainly upset GTI owners, but the good news is, if you're happy with the slightly plainer looks and 25 horsepower deficit of the 90 PS version, bagging one of these will save you about $5,000. That's an amount not to be sniffed at. You pays your money, you takes your choice, and with this, mine would always go towards either a Picanto or the Lupo GTI. Thanks to everyone for watching, to Chris for lending me this car. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye bye.